Welcome back to Open Line. We want to listen in on the Democratic response to the governor's State of the State address tonight.
That there are numerous political and philosophical differences between the governor and his party and your House Democrats and your Senate Democrats. The governor has made his argument, and now we're here to make ours. And speaking for the Democrats tonight is my friend, Senate Minority Leader Jeff Yarbrough.
Thanks. Thank you, Leader Camper. All of us who have the honor of serving in this Capitol have a big choice to make. Whether to give in to the ideological, divisive politics that's hard to escape from these days, or whether to find common ground and solve the big problems that people actually face. If the people who work here judge their job by whether they're being good Republicans or good Democrats, you can rest assured that they're probably not doing the best job representing people. If we judge the state of the state by whether we're moving towards a Fox News perspective or a MSNBC perspective, you can rest assured that we're not actually doing the right thing for the state. And while we were encouraged to see that most of Governor Lee's speech focused on kitchen table issues like education and health care, it was disappointing to see the governor, who campaigned on bringing people together, focus one of his biggest priorities on one of the most divisive issues in American politics. Every week that you hear the legislators in this building fighting over abortion and private school vouchers and refugees and block grants and who can have adoptions and who can use which bathrooms, that's time that this legislature is not focused on solving the actual problems that face actual people in Tennessee. We shouldn't just throw red meat anytime dogs start barking. The governor has a lot of work to do to change the tone and the trajectory of this place to focus on the things that really do matter. So my mom was a child abuse investigator for the state when I was growing up in Dyersburg. And when people have that sort of issue and make a phone call to the state, they need somebody to answer, they need them to show up, and they need them to help. And what I learned from that is there are a lot of people who just want this government to work and to work for them. They just want the streets paved, the 911 calls answered, the trash picked up. They want to be able to live in a safe neighborhood, afford a decent, send their kids to a decent school, afford to make a living, afford to retire with a little bit of dignity and not be a burden on those that follow them. And Democrats in this legislature are willing and eager to work across the aisle with this governor every day that he's focused on the things that matter to Tennesseans. Now, we heard the governor put forward a number of initiatives tonight that could do some good. Many of us here have been working on these initiatives, like workforce, like education funding, like mental health, for years, and we are excited that the governor is showing some leadership in those areas. And we will be willing partners, because we all need the governors to succeed. But you can't lead people if you're not willing to level with them. And for many of the issues, Tennessee needs far more than the incremental steps that the governor put forward tonight. The governor may see, but it's not clear that he understands. Following an unprecedented decade of economic expansion, our state is still in the basement compared to the rest of the country when it comes to public school funding, when it comes to hospital closures, drug overdose deaths, violent crime, and medical debt. We lead the nation in children losing health care, and we have lots of counties where there are fewer businesses and fewer jobs today than there were before the last recession. We don't have to fix everything at once, but the governor must at least acknowledge the seriousness of the challenges that we are facing. And the citizens of this state deserve to hear the governor lay out a bolder vision for where he wants to really focus the state's attention and put us on a better path. While unquestionably the people in this room we stand with teachers and parents and families across the state in welcoming every dollar that's put into education investment and literacy, teacher pay. But the reality is, what was announced tonight is an early and modest step on a long road to doing right by our schools. It's only a record-setting investment because Tennessee has a really bad record when it comes to funding education. Tennessee was ranked 45th in per pupil funding before this speech, and after this investment, Tennessee will probably still be ranked 45th in education. We certainly won't get out of the bottom 10. We'll still be trailing almost every other state in our region except for Mississippi. What was announced tonight for teachers, even if implemented perfectly, which everybody knows doesn't always happen, but even if implemented perfectly, might lead to an additional $20 or $25 a week for a teacher. And that's good, don't get me wrong, we're for that. But it's probably not enough to end the need that too many teachers have to take on a second job. It's not going to end their need to still go out and buy school supplies for too many kids in their schools. It's a good start, but it doesn't eliminate the structural deficit that's built into our basic education program, which leaves local governments filling in the gaps and making up the difference between what the state provides and what reality requires for running a school. So my son is a 5th grader at a school with 467 other Tennesseans, and according to the BEP, his school doesn't need a nurse, doesn't need its assistant principal, and could get by with about 10 fewer teachers than it actually has. If his school or any other school like it across the state reduce staffing to the levels that are actually set out in the BEP, there will be a widespread revolt, and for good reason. The governor said tonight that he would do whatever it takes to make Tennessee the best state to be a student and the best state to be a teacher. Tennesseans have heard governors talk that talk before. But if we're really going to do whatever it takes, the governor's budget and plans need to start matching the ambition of his speech. At a time of record budget surpluses, we encourage the governor to work with legislators on both sides of the aisle to give a good hard look at whether we can and should do more in 2020. And we call on the governor to lay out a plan to ensure that this year's investment isn't just a one-time catch-up, but the beginning of a multi-year effort toward adequately funding our schools. Frankly, what is announced tonight, $117 million that's going to go year in, year out into education improvements, that's just a little bit more than the $110 million that vouchers are supposed to cost the state once they're fully implemented. So in a lot of ways, we're not even sure if we've caught up with last year's losses before we start filling in the holes. So it's good news, but it's not clear that we've really made the steps that we need to. Tennesseans don't expect their state government to spend foolishly. They expect us to live within our means. But just imagine how much more we could afford if we weren't wasting money on private school vouchers, if we weren't sending almost $1 billion of child care and TANF funds back to the federal government, if we weren't sending $1 billion a year in Medicaid funding back to the federal government. And this is a big deal. The governor announced a lot of initiatives tonight focused on mental health care and substance abuse, and make no mistake about it, some of those ideas are great bipartisan ideas that we all support. But here's the reality. Tennessee could spend less money to reach more communities and help more people if we just simply join the other 36 states that have expanded Medicaid, right? The governor announced almost $300 million in initiatives that go towards shoring up TennCare, providing new access and safety nets and pilot projects. But that's $300 million that could have gone straight into public education if we had just expanded. Just look at the opiate epidemic in our state. So we have hospitals out there that to address the number of babies that are born with neonatal abstinence units have had to build new wings. Like, wrap your head around that for a second. That is private businesses that are undertaking capital expenditures and construction projects because they expect us not to solve this problem for the foreseeable future. This legislature should not rest until we can repurpose those NIC units to do something else because we've done better than expected to help families conquer addiction. Battling that epidemic, though, isn't a public policy challenge, it's a political challenge. We have a political obstacle where a majority is refusing to acknowledge the reality that's right in front of it. And I was also disappointed tonight to see the governor mention this ill-fated attempt at a block grant, and to mention and to say that he doesn't know how it's going to come out. It looks pretty clear from what the federal government said last week that it's not going to come out well for us, and that we will have wasted a year of time, money, and attention and effort without improving the health care of one person in Tennessee. What's 100% indisputable right now is that all of these blue ribbon task forces, commissions, public hearings, planning processes, they haven't led to any improvements. And there are steps that we could take, and we know that. Now, there's nobody more excited than the people in this room to see the governor invested in mental health care, substance abuse, and those safety net issues. But why in the world are we doing this in a way that we could do it when we could just draw down those dollars from the federal government and do more and reach more people? You know, he talked a little bit about rural communities that are distressed tonight, but that's one of the reasons. In our rural areas, 40% of households have unpaid medical bills waiting for them at home. Sometimes we get lost in these big numbers and statistics. That means if you're driving down the street and you see 5 houses, at 2 of those houses, there's unpaid medical bills. That's a lot of houses that are struggling to get by. And that's just one reason among many that lots of Tennesseans aren't really seeing a better quality of life despite the current economy. It's a great economy to own development property in Nashville or to own a lot of stocks in the market, but that doesn't apply to a whole lot of Tennesseans. The economy that's led to fortunes for many, or for some, is really still leaving way too many people behind. Even in this economy right now, 1 in 3 Tennesseans don't have confidence they'll be able to pay their monthly bills. More than 50% of Tennesseans aren't doing well enough to save for retirement or college. And lots of families are just one flat tire, one sickness, one accident away from a financial crisis. You know, the governor mentioned some of Tennessee's accolades for fiscal management, but it's not wise money management to fail to invest in your people. You know, it's unwise to send $732 million of TANF money to let it sit in a bank account. It's not good fiscal management to not figure out, to be one of only 2 states in the whole country that couldn't figure out how to spend $200 million to help child care. You know, I had a constituent who emailed me last week and said that she's on 11 wait lists to find child care that starts when she goes back to work this summer. Child care is an actual crisis for people across the state, and if we're not going to actually do the work that's being done elsewhere to provide those opportunities, I don't think that we can be bragging too much about our fiscal management. No parent in this state would brag about being debt-free if they're not sending their kid to the pediatrician and putting a little money away for their future. I think the biggest unanswered question tonight has to do with the governor's criminal justice reform package. The governor campaigned on criminal justice reform. He's spoken a lot about criminal justice reform. He's said a lot of the right things about criminal justice reform. There was a policy report that came out that listed 23 recommendations about criminal justice reform, but it's entirely unclear which of those we're actually trying to implement this year. And we look forward to hearing more from the governor and seeing where that's going to be, because Tennessee is moving in the wrong direction on criminal justice. The costs of running our prisons have exploded to over $1 billion. Actually, after tonight, over $1.1 billion. But we still have the 4th highest violent crime rate in the entire country. Now, if you look at what's happening across the country, we've seen over 30 states that have decreased incarceration at the same time that they've decreased violent crime. In Tennessee, we've actually passed 2 criminal justice reform bills that have led to more people being incarcerated and prison costs going up. We've been moving the wrong direction, and the truth is, people want to talk about tough on crime. What we all really care about and what we have to care about is keeping people safe. And what we're doing right now, all the data, all the evidence in the world shows, is counterproductive to people's safety. We're not actually doing anything to move crime down one bit. Because when we look at those numbers, like, this isn't just blue states that are doing reform, by the way. This is Texas and Georgia and Louisiana that have reduced their prison populations by lowering the amount of time served, and by not putting people in prison just for nonviolent drug offenses, where we obviously need to be putting a lot more people in treatment. We support a lot of the initiatives that would improve the educational and job opportunities for people who are incarcerated. They would improve the health and mental health and treatment for drug use that are occurring in our prison facilities. But perhaps we shouldn't be putting the people who need to go into treatment for mental health disorders and for drug addiction. Maybe we need to try to find them treatment first. Because right now we're just putting bad money after good. We arrest more people than almost any state. We put 10% more people and 50% more women in prison than the national average, while other states have gone the other way. 3 out of 4 people last year, this isn't old data, this is last year, 3 out of 4 people who enter Tennessee prison is a nonviolent offender. And just in the last decade, we've increased the time served on nonviolent drug offenses by 30%. That's not some Democrats' talking points, that comes from the governor's own report. And I'm surprised that we didn't hear more about that tonight. We have to learn from what's actually working in other states. These problems aren't going to go away by themselves. Tennesseans deserve better. And everyone understands that the governor here did not create every problem in the state. Some of these have been building up for a long time. Everyone gets that we have a Republican legislature, that we're a relatively low-tax state. But we at least ought to be able to keep up with Kentucky when it comes to health insurance. We ought to be able to do as well as Arkansas at providing child care. We should be able to keep up with Texas on criminal justice reform. And we ought to be able to keep up with Alabama when it comes to education funding. That's not asking too much. Tennesseans deserve that from this governor and from this government. There was talk tonight about how this year celebrates the 100th anniversary of this legislature, people gathering in this Capitol to be the final state in the country to ratify the 19th Amendment and give women the right to vote. We know that great things can happen in this building. And anyone who sees the people of Tennessee knows that great things need to happen in this building a lot more often. In every initiative announced tonight that might genuinely move the ball forward on any of these priorities that would help real people, Governor Lee will find no stronger ally than me and the other people in the Democratic caucuses in this legislature. We believe that everyone in this state, regardless of where they're from, regardless of who their parents are, regardless of anything else, deserves a fair shot at success. The governor opened some conversations tonight about attacking some of those barriers and expanding some of those opportunities, and we are going to be part of those conversations. We want to help him lead. And if the governor can level with the people of Tennessee, can level with members of his own party, and lead this legislature and state away from divisive politics and toward a government that focuses on actually improving people's lives, the state of our state will be heading firmly in the right direction. So thank you, God bless, and good night.
All right, that was Senator Jeff Yarborough giving the Democratic response to the governor's State of the State address tonight. We're gonna, what were your takeaways, Pat?
Well, I think you heard exactly what you thought the Democrats would be likely to say, and that is the governor is taking steps in the right direction, just not big enough steps.
Right.
And obviously, they still want to work with the governor on the things that they like in that. There's some things most of his stuff went on the programs. He didn't talk about the abortion bills that are in the legislature, which I think there's also some disagreement between Republicans and Democrats about that. So I guess I'm not surprised to hear what he had to say. I'm not sure what they had to say got heard that much across the state tonight. And again, as he mentioned, the Republicans have a major control. So one of the real issues for the Democrats, as well as the Republicans, is who's going to win elections. And we have another round of elections. The entire House is up for re-election, and about a third, a little bit more of the Senate is going to be up. So there'll be a chance for people, if they don't like what's going on, to make those changes. That'll be coming up in August and again in November. But until it stays the way it is right now, the Republicans are in control, and if they're united, they're going to pass what they want to, and the Democrats can only basically change things around the margins or be able to shape legislation and pass something when the Republicans are divided.
That's right. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more of this discussion. We would love to hear from you on your thoughts on the state of the state or the Democratic response. Now's your chance to weigh in and be heard. 615-737-PLUS is the number to call.